Emily Carter, a 21-year-old college junior, was pursuing a degree in psychology at a small, unassuming college nestled in upstate New York. Her days were a balancing act between rigorous coursework and the part-time job that helped keep her afloat financially. Born into a modest family, Emily had never known luxury or excess. But what she did know was the value of hard work, faith, and kindness. Her mother had always reminded her, even during tough times, that life wasn't just about personal success. "You're here for more than yourself," her mother would say, her voice calm but resolute. Emily had grown up steeped in these values, often hearing verses from the Bible echo in her childhood home. One verse, in particular, had become a guiding principle in her life: "Love your neighbor as yourself," Mark 12 verse 31. It was this principle that carried Emily through her busy days. When she wasn't attending lectures or poring over psychology textbooks, she could be found behind the counter at the McDonald's on Elmwood Avenue. It wasn't glamorous work, certainly not the kind of job she imagined for herself in the long term, but Emily didn't view it as just another stepping stone. For her, McDonald's was a place where she could live out her faith in small, tangible ways. She saw each customer as an opportunity to brighten someone's day, whether it was through her warm smile, her attentive service, or simply taking a moment to ask how someone was doing. Emily made it her mission to treat everyone who walked through those glass doors with the same care and respect she believed everyone deserved. The job was demanding, especially during the lunch rush when the line seemed endless and the orders piled up faster than the fries could be cooked. There were days when her feet ached from standing too long and her patience was tested by irritable customers. But Emily approached each challenge with grace, reminding herself that she wasn't just flipping burgers or pouring sodas, she was planting seeds. "Every act of kindness is a seed planted," she would often say to herself. It was a mantra she clung to, especially on the harder days when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. She believed, with unwavering conviction, that these small acts of kindness, even ones that might seem insignificant at the moment, had the potential to grow into something greater. Emily's co-workers often marveled at her positive attitude, while others might grumble about difficult customers or the monotony of their shifts. Emily seemed genuinely content. "How do you always stay so upbeat?" one of her co-workers asked her during a break. Emily paused, sipping her water before responding. "I guess it's because I see this job as more than just a paycheck," she said. "Sure, it's not my dream job, but that doesn't mean I can't make a difference while I'm here. You never know how much a smile or a kind word can mean to someone. It could be the thing that turns their whole day around." Her words weren't just lip service. Emily genuinely believed in the power of small, good deeds. She thought of them as tiny, invisible threads weaving together the fabric of a better world. There were moments when this belief was tested, of course, like the time a customer snapped at her because his fries weren't hot enough, or when she stayed late to clean up a spill that no one else wanted to deal with. But even in those moments, Emily found a way to reframe her frustrations. "This is an opportunity," she would think to herself, "an opportunity to show patience, to practice kindness." Over time, these small choices to respond with grace and compassion became second nature to Emily. They were as much a part of her as the beat of her heart or the breath in her lungs. What Emily didn't realize, though, was how deeply her actions were affecting the people around her. Regular customers began to notice the young woman who always greeted them with a smile, no matter how busy the restaurant was. Co-workers who had once been indifferent started to follow her example, treating customers and each other with a little more care. Emily's belief that kindness was a seed being planted was proving true in ways she couldn't yet see. But for her, it wasn't about the recognition or the ripple effects. She wasn't trying to make a grand statement or change the world overnight. She simply wanted to live her faith in the small, everyday moments that made up her life. And in doing so, she was already sowing the seeds of something far greater than she could have imagined. That Wednesday afternoon was one of those picture-perfect days when the sky was an unbroken canvas of blue, and the sunlight poured generously through the large glass windows of the McDonald's on Elmwood Avenue. The golden rays danced across the polished, tiled floor, creating shimmering patterns that moved with the rhythm of the day. Emily Carter stood behind the counter, as she did most afternoons, her apron neatly tied, her hands busily wiping down the coffee machine. She approached her work with the same quiet dedication she brought to everything in her life. For Emily, even the small, repetitive tasks of her part-time job were an opportunity to serve others, a philosophy she embraced wholeheartedly. Soft background music played through the restaurant, barely noticeable above the distant hum of the fryers and the faint chatter of a few customers scattered across the dining area. Emily hummed along with the melody, a gentle hymn she'd loved since childhood. It reminded her of her mother's voice and the simple lessons of faith she'd learned growing up, to find joy in the everyday and to seek opportunities to bring goodness into the world. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, letting in a whisper of cool air and the cheerful ding of the entry bell. Emily glanced up instinctively, her hands still busy polishing the chrome finish of the coffee maker. A young man stepped inside. He moved with a hesitation that immediately caught Emily's attention. He wasn't dressed to stand out, just a gray hoodie, slightly frayed jeans, and a pair of sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. His shoulders slouched ever so slightly, as if he were carrying the weight of uncertainty or worry. His eyes scanned the room briefly, taking in the sparse crowd before he turned his focus toward the counter. There was something about his posture, a mixture of shyness and unease, that tugged at Emily's innate sense of compassion. As he approached, Emily greeted him with the same warm smile she gave to everyone. "Hi there. What can I get started for you today?" she asked, her voice light and welcoming. The young man hesitated, his eyes briefly meeting hers before darting down to the menu board above her head. After a moment, he placed his order, a burger and a soda. His voice was soft, almost apologetic. "That'll be $5.75, Emily said, punching the total into the register. The man reached into the pocket of his hoodie, then his jeans, patting each one with increasing urgency. Emily noticed the faint lines of worry creasing his brow as his hands searched every pocket. Coming up empty. He paused, his shoulders dropping slightly. I think I forgot my wallet," he muttered, his voice barely audible. His gaze fell to the floor, avoiding the weight of embarrassment he clearly felt. Emily stood still for a moment, her hands resting on the counter. She didn't need to think twice. Compassion came as naturally to her as breathing. She remembered a verse her mother used to quote during moments of reflection: "Give, and it will be given to you," Luke 6 verse 38. With a gentle smile, she broke the silence. "It's okay," she said, her tone reassuring. "I'll cover this meal for you." The young man's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. "You don't have to," he stammered quickly. "I can come back later to pay." Emily raised a hand to gently stop him, her smile unwavering. "There's no need for that," she said. "We all have days when we need a little help. Let this be my chance to help you today, just as God would want me to." Before he could protest further, she swiftly swiped her card through the reader and turned to prepare his order. Her movements were practiced and efficient, but there was a kindness in the way she handled the tray, arranging the items with care. When she handed it to him, she added with a touch of warmth, "Enjoy your meal. It's just a small gift, nothing more." The young man hesitated, as if searching for the right words. His expression softened, and gratitude filled his face. "Thank you so much," he said, his voice unsteady. "I really appreciate it." Emily simply nodded, watching as he took the tray and made his way to a seat by the window. The sunlight framed him there, casting golden patches across the table and the floor beneath his feet. For a moment, Emily allowed herself to pause and observe. She didn't expect anything in return. She didn't dwell on what she'd done. To her, it was a small act of kindness, a seed she'd planted without a second thought. What Emily didn't realize was that this tiny seed of kindness was about to grow into something far greater than she could have ever imagined. Emily had no idea that the young man she had helped so casually that day was Barron Trump, the youngest son of former U.S. President Donald Trump. For her, it was a simple gesture of kindness, a natural response to someone in need. But for Barron, it was something far greater. It wasn't just a meal. It was a moment that left a deep imprint on his heart. Barron had stepped away from his ever-present security detail that day, longing for a sense of normalcy and independence. In his quest for freedom, he had stumbled upon an unexpected lesson. The young woman at the counter, with her calm demeanor and genuine smile, had shown him a type of kindness that felt rare in a world where people often acted with ulterior motives. When Barron returned to the Mar-a-Lago estate later that evening, the memory of Emily lingered in his mind. Her words, her smile, and her refusal to make him feel small or embarrassed replayed in his thoughts. It was the kind of interaction that demanded reflection, and Barron found himself eager to share it. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner in the grand dining room, Barron finally spoke up. The table was set with ornate silverware and fine china, the soft glow of the chandeliers casting a warm light over the room. "I want to tell you about something that happened today," Barron began, his tone steady yet contemplative. The conversation around the table quieted. Donald Trump, seated at the head, looked over at his son with curiosity. It wasn't often that Barron initiated discussions during family dinners, and his reflective tone caught everyone's attention. "I don't think she knew who I was," Barron continued, his eyes fixed on the polished surface of the table. "She helped me simply because it was the right thing to do. No hesitation, no expectation of anything in return." Donald Trump set his fork down, leaning forward slightly, his hands clasped together on the table, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me more," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of genuine interest. Barron hesitated for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he began to recount the story in detail. "When I walked into the McDonald's, I didn't expect anyone to treat me differently. But when I realized I didn't have my wallet, I felt embarrassed, really embarrassed. I didn't know what to do. I was just standing there, fumbling with my pockets. And then she stepped in." He paused, his voice softening as he recalled Emily's actions. "She didn't ask me any questions, didn't make a big deal out of it. She just said she'd cover it. And she did it in a way that didn't make me feel bad. It wasn't about pity or charity. It was just kindness. I think, to her, it was simply the right thing to do. Like it was a duty, not something extraordinary." The room fell silent. Melania Trump, seated beside Barron, set her glass down gently. A faint smile tugged at her lips as she listened, her gaze shifting between her son and her husband. Donald Trump, however, remained quiet, his eyes reflecting an intensity of thought. He had always valued boldness and initiative, qualities that propelled him to success. Yet this story of quiet generosity seemed to stir something deeper. After a long pause, he finally spoke. His voice was measured but carried a note of sincerity rarely heard. "I remember something my mother once told me," he said, leaning back slightly in his chair. "She said, 'Let your kindness shine like a candle in the dark.'" His words hung in the air for a moment before he continued. "She was right. Barron, acts like this, things people do without expecting anything in return, have the power to change the lives of both the giver and the receiver. That young woman didn't just help you. She reminded you, and now us, that there is still goodness in the world. Barron looked up at his father, surprised but comforted by the wisdom in his words. It wasn't often that their conversations touched on topics like kindness or generosity. "Dad," Barron said, his voice carrying a rare sense of conviction, "I think she's someone special. We should thank her." Donald Trump nodded, a glint of determination in his eyes. "Not just thank her," he replied. "Good deeds should never go unnoticed. Barron, someone like her deserves to know that what she did made a difference, not just for you, but for everyone she might inspire." Turning to one of his assistants, who stood at the edge of the room, Trump gave a crisp instruction. "Find her. I want to know this young woman's name, where she works, and everything we can learn about her. Let's make sure she knows her kindness was seen and appreciated." Barron smiled, a genuine expression of gratitude and respect crossing his face. For the first time, he felt a profound connection between the act of kindness he had experienced and the values his father had just expressed. In the warm glow of the chandelier and the quiet comfort of their family dinner, Barron knew that this story was far from over. It was just the beginning. A few weeks later, on a lively and chaotic Friday afternoon, Emily Carter was working through the height of the lunch rush at McDonald's on Elmwood Avenue. The small restaurant hummed with energy as customers lined up at the counter, filling the room with a mixture of conversations, the beeping of fryers, and the constant hiss of the soda machine. Behind the counter, Emily moved with practiced efficiency, her ponytail bouncing slightly as she darted between tasks. Despite the growing line and the occasional impatient customer, she kept her trademark smile intact, greeting each person with genuine warmth. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, a testament to the busyness of the day, but she never let her pace falter. To Emily, each customer deserved her full attention, no matter how long the line stretched. The automatic doors slid open with their usual soft ding, letting in a gust of cold air from the brisk November afternoon. At first, Emily didn't look up. She was too focused on wrapping an order of fries and making sure the register had enough small bills for change. But something about the sudden hush that swept through the restaurant made her pause. The steady buzz of conversations faded into muted whispers. Emily straightened, glancing up toward the door, and what she saw made her freeze. A line of sleek black SUVs had pulled up in front of the building, their glossy exteriors reflecting the pale sunlight. The doors of one opened, and stepping out was Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. His unmistakable presence, flanked by security personnel in dark suits, commanded attention the moment he entered. Accompanying him was Barron Trump, his youngest son, who stood slightly behind him, his tall frame and quiet demeanor contrasting with his father's confident stride. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, with all eyes locked on the unexpected visitors. Donald Trump walked with purpose toward the counter, his sharp gaze scanning the room before settling on Emily. There was an unusual warmth in his expression, one that softened the typically stern demeanor he was known for. "Is Emily Carter here?" he asked, his deep voice carrying both authority and a surprising friendliness. Emily, still holding the cleaning cloth she had been using moments before, felt every pair of eyes in the room shift to her. Her heart raced as whispers swirled around her, growing louder. Taking a steadying breath, she stepped forward, her cheeks flushing under the weight of the attention. "Yes, that's me," she said, her voice slightly shaky but calm. Donald Trump's face lit up with a smile that seemed to make him instantly approachable. He stepped closer, extending his hand. "Emily, my son has told me so much about you," he began, his tone both genuine and warm. "You didn't just help him that day. You reminded all of us that kindness still exists in this world. And for that, we're here to thank you." Emily's mind reeled. She had no idea who Barron was at the time. And even now, the idea of the former president standing in front of her, thanking her for what she had considered a small act of kindness, felt surreal. Barron, who had been standing quietly behind his father, stepped forward. His face was a mix of shyness and sincerity as he looked at Emily. "Thank you, Emily," he said, his voice soft but steady. "I will never forget what you did for me that day." Emily's cheeks burned as she quickly waved her hands, trying to brush off the attention. "It was nothing, really," she said, her voice rising slightly in nervousness. "Just a meal. I think anyone would have done the same." Trump's expression grew more serious but remained kind. "But to us, it wasn't just a meal," he said, his voice carrying a quiet gravity. "It was an act of kindness that revealed something important: your generosity, your compassion, and acts like that deserve to be recognized." He turned and signaled to one of his assistants, who stepped forward carrying a sealed envelope. Handing it to Emily, Trump continued, "Inside is a full scholarship, so you can complete your college education without worrying about finances. We want you to know that your kindness didn't just make a difference for Barron. It inspired us, and we hope it will inspire others as well." Emily's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the envelope. Her fingers hesitated at the seal before carefully opening it. Inside, she found a scholarship certificate. But what caught her attention most was a folded letter. The paper felt heavy in her hands, and as she unfolded it, she saw Barron's handwriting, neat, deliberate, and deeply personal. The letter was short, but full of heartfelt gratitude. Barron wrote about how her simple act of kindness had turned what could have been an embarrassing moment into a reminder of the goodness in people. As Emily read, tears welled in her eyes. She clutched the letter and the envelope to her chest, looking up at Barron and his father. Her voice was unsteady as she said, I don't know what to say. Thank you. I'm so grateful. But I feel like what I did doesn't deserve this much in return." Donald Trump let out a hearty laugh, his voice filling the room with warmth. "Sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest meaning," he said. "And as long as you keep spreading kindness, that's the best way to thank us." The restaurant was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. Customers clapped, some even cheering, as Emily stood there, overwhelmed but smiling through her tears. Her co-workers patted her on the back, and she could hear snippets of their excited whispers. Emily didn't notice the cameras flashing outside or the growing crowd gathering at the windows to catch a glimpse of the commotion. In that moment, all she could feel was gratitude and the quiet, profound realization that a single act of kindness had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. As the convoy of sleek black SUVs disappeared into the distance, Emily Carter stood motionless by the glass doors of the McDonald's, clutching the envelope tightly against her chest. She wasn't even sure why she held it so protectively, as if letting it go might somehow make the surreal events of the past few moments fade away. Around her, the restaurant buzzed with excitement. Customers clapped her on the shoulder, some calling out words of congratulations, others simply smiling in admiration at what had just unfolded. But Emily hardly noticed. The noise of the room seemed muted, drowned out by the rush of emotions swirling within her. She had never been one to seek attention, let alone the spotlight that had just shone so brightly on her. This wasn't about the recognition or the applause. It was about something far deeper. Taking a steadying breath, she walked back to the counter, finding solace in the small corner where employees usually took short breaks. There, she sank onto the stool, her hands still gripping the envelope. The weight of what it symbolized felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. For a moment, she hesitated, letting her fingers trace the edge of the flap. Finally, she opened it once more, as if she needed to reassure herself that the contents were real. Inside was the scholarship certificate, its crisp lettering promising to cover her remaining college tuition. But what caught her attention again was the letter folded neatly beside it, a handwritten note from Barron Trump. She unfolded it slowly, her eyes scanning each carefully pinned line. His words were simple yet profound, imbued with a sincerity that struck a chord deep within her. He wrote about the day he had walked into the restaurant, feeling embarrassed and out of place, and how her small gesture had meant so much more than she could have imagined. "You didn't just help me with a meal," Barron had written. "You reminded me that kindness still exists in the world, unconditional kindness that asks for nothing in return. I won't ever forget that." Emily felt a soft smile tug at her lips as her eyes blurred with tears. She brushed them away quickly, not out of shame, but because the emotion of it all was so overwhelming. She leaned back against the wall, her gaze lifting to the ceiling as a memory from her childhood surfaced. She thought of her mother, a kind and gentle woman who had always made sure Emily knew the value of compassion. Her mother often told her stories from the Bible during quiet evenings, sitting together at the small kitchen table. One verse in particular came rushing back to her now: "A man scattered seed on good soil, and it produced a crop 100 times more than was sown." Luke 8 verse 8. In that moment, Emily understood the truth of those words in a way she never had before. That day in the restaurant, she hadn't thought much about what she was doing. To her, it was just a simple act, a way to help someone who seemed to be in need. She hadn't expected thanks, let alone this. But now, as she held Barron's letter and reread his words, she realized something extraordinary. The seed of kindness she had planted that day had grown into something much larger than herself. It had touched not only Barron but his family, and even the strangers in the restaurant who had witnessed the encounter. Emily's chest swelled with a quiet, overwhelming hope. She realized that sometimes, even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching the deepest parts of another person's heart, and those ripples could spark changes that were miraculous in their own right. She folded the letter carefully, placing it back into the envelope as if safeguarding a treasure. "Sow your seed and do not stop," she whispered, her lips softly reciting a verse she knew by heart, Ecclesiastes 11 verse 6. The room around her began to settle back into its usual rhythm. Customers placed orders. The kitchen hummed with activity, and the chatter of everyday life filled the air. But for Emily, the world felt different. There was a quiet, profound realization that the kindness she had given freely had not been lost. It had found a way to grow, to flourish, and to shine brightly. And as she sat there, clutching the envelope and reflecting on the events of the day, she felt a sense of purpose take root in her heart. This was more than a moment to celebrate. It was a reminder of what kindness could do. Emily's story reminds us that kindness is the most precious gift anyone can give. It doesn't have to be grand gestures or expensive offerings. Sometimes, a simple act, a kind word, or a sincere helping hand can change someone's life in ways we may never realize. Remember that every act of kindness is like a seed planted in good soil. It can grow in circumstances we could never anticipate, bringing about changes far greater than we could imagine. May this story inspire you to spread kindness in your daily life. Love and treat those around you with compassion, no matter who they are, because sometimes, even the smallest actions can create miracles for the world. May you always find joy in giving and receive good things in return from life. Let your kindness be a light that illuminates your path and the paths of those you encounter. Sow your seeds with faith and do not stop. One day, you will see the beautiful flowers bloom from the very seeds you have planted. Let's spread the light of kindness and compassion together. If this story inspired you, please please take a moment to hit the like button. It's a small act that means a lot. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that uplift, motivate, and remind us of the power of love and generosity. By subscribing, you're not just joining a community, you're becoming part of a movement to share hope and positivity. Make sure to tap the notification bell, too, so you'll never miss out on new content designed to brighten your day. Every click, every share, and every like helps these stories reach more people, planting seeds of kindness across the world. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time. Thank you for being here, and let's keep the spirit of kindness alive.